Hi, this is Emily with Park Street. This is Nick Papanicolaou, the VP of Business Development for New Brand Ventures at Pernod Ricard USA. Nick, start off by, that is a long title. Tell us what you do every day.
It's a long title and a long last name, and you pronounced it very well.
I got that one right at least.
Yeah, exactly. So I joined Pernod Ricard in 2015 to head our M&A and strategy team out of the US, out of New York. And one of the internal strategy projects we worked on was to launch an internal incubation group. Mm-hmm. So within about a year of joining, we launched a group called New Brand Ventures, which is it's a hybrid between incubating some of our own internal brands that we think had potential, but had never really been given the love, attention, the money, etc.
Sure.
And then the other component of it is investing in entrepreneurial-led external brands that we bring in through a partnership, minority or majority investment, and really work with the entrepreneur to unlock value. And all of this came about in the work we did a year or so leading up to the launch of New Brand Ventures was basically with the insight that as a portfolio we'd had Jameson and still have Jameson, kicking butt, growing double digits for 20 to 25 years. And it's all amazing and great, but we know that the party can't go on forever. And we took a really a good cold hard look at ourselves as an organization and at what we'd done. And I think we realized that we hadn't necessarily done the best job at innovating our own brands. Mm-hmm. And we hadn't done the best job at teaming up with entrepreneurs and investing in them. So with that insight, we said, let's launch this group, and the sole purpose of the group is to incubate and find the next generation of growth for Pernod Ricard USA.
All right, so let's say I have a new brand. Well, not a new brand. I've been running a small independent brand for a while. What are some of the milestones I need to have hit before you can even consider partnering with Pernod?
So we have some metrics. I wouldn't say any of them are hard metrics, because if you think about the industry, if we were to put out a case volume threshold, mm-hmm. you can imagine that for a $20 vodka selling in Texas is going to be very different from a single malt scotch at $60, $80 selling in Illinois or Arkansas, whatever it is, right? So it's hard to kind of universally apply one metric. Having said that, we kind of do, and I will say what that is. So in general, we don't look at brands below 10,000 9-liter cases, which I realize is quite a high benchmark. As you know, I had my own brand at some point, and I was nowhere near that threshold. So I realized what a challenge that is for entrepreneurs. But for us, I think we look at it as, number one, we are obviously a very big company, so we need to be involved early, but we need to make sure that it's stuff that can move the needle and that we think we can help unlock value for. And usually if it's too small or too early, that's hard for us to do. But then also we look at other metrics, and I won't bore you or the audience with too much detail, but I think account retention, we've got a very holistic KPI scorecard where we've got 10 or 11 different measures. So we don't look at any in isolation, but I think account retention is one we think is very important, because we want to make sure if you're a small brand and you're selling to 100 or 1,000 accounts, that those guys are reordering, because mm-hmm. if you're losing 500 of them and then you go out and replace it with a new 500, that's not really sustainable growth. So we really want to look to make sure account retention is high and trending upwards, and that the case volume thresholds we mentioned are not, national numbers. For instance, we'd much rather have a brand that's doing 10,000 or close to 10,000 cases in 3 or 4 states versus a brand that's 10,000 cases in all 50 markets, and they've been going at it for years, and they've kind of exhausted or tapped into as much distribution growth as they can. So does it make sense?
Yeah, I get that. Velocity.
Yeah. Retention and velocity. Exactly.
Okay. All right. So then, I know you talk to a lot of brands. What are the most common, pitfalls and mistakes you see?
I'm wondering if I should reference my own personal experience instead of calling out. No, I think as a general rule, there are probably a few things we see. I think often we get entrepreneurs who come to us and say, I've got, this fantastic, amazing product. This is dynamite. It's just waiting to explode, and we need you to help us explode it or blow it up.
Yeah.
And to us, that's probably a little concerning, because if you haven't made your product work or established some kind of proof of concept, then it's unlikely that we're going to be able to do that, because we have a lot of value add to an entrepreneur, but one of the clear ones is scalability and distribution growth. So if you haven't proven in your home market or one or two markets that you really have brand saliency and there are consumers and accounts that are reordering, then it's unlikely we're going to be able to. So I think that's a big thing we see a lot. People saying, we created this whole thing and now we just need you to unlock the value.
Oh, yeah.
So we're looking more for somebody to say, you know, I've done a fantastic job in these 3 or 4 markets, here's why. We check that against our own KPIs, and if that's the case, then we think absolutely we can help add value and, you know, scale you regionally, and then if that works, then scale you nationally. So that's probably a major mistake. I think the other is the flip side of that, people that go too quickly or think they've got something that's working prematurely. Mm-hmm. So they might expand to too many states, or, you know, if you think of the aged categories, aged rum, aged whiskey, sometimes they're growing and opening up states more quickly. They can actually lay down liquid to fill that need. So I think, and that's something we see, by the way, I think that exists across industries. Premature scaling is
really
like a fault of or a reason a lot of startups go belly up. So I think those are probably the 2 biggest ones I see. Relying on us too much, and then or expecting us to do too much, and then scaling too quickly without making sure that what they're doing in their home state works.
All right, now you talked about your own brand.
Yeah.
If you could go back and do it all again, or tell your past self,
Yep.
give yourself advice, what would you say?
So honestly, it's a fantastic question, and I would say this to any entrepreneur. I think the idea of build it and they will come is kind of an old mentality. In other words, and it's actually, I've said this in public before, and I hope people aren't offended, but I think you could argue it's an egotistical thing to launch a brand. If you just say, I've got a fantastic, you know, vodka, and just because of this label, everybody's going to buy it. Mm-hmm. It's either, you know, somewhat egotistical, maybe it's a little clueless, but that mentality of build it and they will come, I think shouldn't exist anymore. And I think entrepreneurs, myself included, I was guilty of that, should go at it in a way that's much more about experimenting, seeing what works, measuring the traction, tweaking the product, tweaking the label, tweaking the marketing messaging, because that's obviously a huge thing in our industry, and really finding out, okay, this may not be what I had in my head for it to work, but this is actually the direction consumers are telling me I should go, and then following that direction. So that's what I would have done differently. Had I'm not sure I'd be sitting in this chair as a Pernod Ricard. No, I'm joking.
Maybe you would have been in the incubation division.
That's true, exactly.
All right, so my last question is, getting back to when you partner with new brands, what could a company expect post-transaction or post-partnership with Pernod?
Yeah, I think there are, as with any change as drastic as that, I think there's a lot of pros but also cons that come with it, and I think we're very upfront when we talk to entrepreneurs about that. I think the obvious pro, okay, in addition to scaling and distribution that I said, I think the obvious pro is that there are so many people, so many resources, so much value add that an entrepreneur can tap into. And by the way, as a side note, we never impose our own, you have to do this, or you have to use this group, or you have to do it, you know, that way. We much prefer an entrepreneur to almost like pick off, you know, a Chinese menu, like I want this, I want that, I want the other. So I think that is a pro, just the massive resources and wealth of opportunity that they can tap into. It's funny because that may also be the negative that a lot of entrepreneurs we've seen, it can be an overwhelming, they're coming from operating a, you know, 2 to 10 person team, let's say, and now there's 50 different names or stakeholders that potentially they want to work with because they can help unlock real value and scale it, but I think that becomes a little bit of a challenge. So what we've tried to do in New Brand Ventures is position the employees in New Brand Ventures almost as the liaison between the entrepreneur and the larger organization. So we're doing a lot of the dirty work or making the introductions or fighting for their cause, etc., because that can be a challenge across lots of companies I've seen. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, all right, Nick, thank you for being here today.